And now there's a TV show that's on right now, Grimm. Has anybody seen it?
Yes.
That's with Dave Gentili.
No, Dave Gentili, who's got the lead in it, is a graduate of SLUH.
Wow.
And I mean, it's sci-fi. I don't know. I guess you want to.
It's a little squirrely.
It's squirrely, yeah. There's a couple of blogs about it that comment on the writer's ability to not write. But Dave Gentili's in it. Now, David was, when he was at school, was very good. He was in an improv class, and he was very good, and he had a very good time. And so we, all of a sudden, I was doing a show one day, and David stopped and came in and said, "Mr. Schulte." He had been through college, and at that particular time, he was trying to decide what to do with his life. And he had gone into a bar at Indiana U, and he had gotten on the Road Rules on MTV, and one of those other reality shows on MTV, as a result of a bet. Somebody bet him because the MTV people were in the other room, and there was this commotion, and he's, "What's going on?" He says, "They're doing this and this guy, but I bet you won't go in for an interview." And he went in for an interview and got the part.
Mr. Schulte, could you hold up that the program from Julius Caesar? Because we got the main characters here, right?
Yes, right.
You were in that too,
Right? Somewhere, yeah.
You were one of the senators, I believe.
I don't remember it. I do remember that it was not a big part.
Cliff, you were you Julius Caesar?
There was Mr. Caesar
And I had a young Caddis girl a couple of years ago in a show.
Yeah.
Who's quite good. She's a musical theater major.
Yeah, she's in New York and in May. Graduated from Indiana.
Indiana.
Yeah.
There's a couple of kids from that cast of that show that are going to go with her.
Yeah.
So, but that's a where were we before we? So basically, I choose shows that way, and I try to get across to the people that SLUH High. Don't stereotype yourself. Enjoy life. I mean, after all, here I'm a math teacher who likes to teach, who likes to do theater. Now, most of those don't go together, and as people say, well, "What do you mean?" I said, I like them. One keeps me sane, the other one keeps me sober. I won't tell you which does which.
You told me sort of an interesting story about how I asked you how you got involved with two what I thought were widely disparate things, theater and math. And you told me about the math. What led you into getting interested in math? I think something in your uncle's basement or something?
Oh, well, I was interested in math in high school, but how that all started was during the summer, of course, back in the Middle Ages when I was a young kid. Air conditioning we did not have. This was right after the Second World War. I still remember the day when the war was over and the people around the streets were shooting off fireworks and hitting pans on the block, and all the stuff that went on. And that, my father had a victory garden in the back, a big lot that they filled with, and we gave to the neighbors, potatoes and tomatoes and whatever else we could grow back there. And so during one of the very warm days, I was in the basement, and there was a box there of things that had been collected from my grandmother's house after she died. And in the box was a bunch of, I will call them, at those particular times they were not like a binder. It was one of these books, like, it had some kind of a book you would take notes in for a class or something like that. And inside were pasted small little bitty newspaper things, which were fillers, I guess, that probably in the Globe or the Post or something like that, on ideas about mathematics. Math is fun or something like that, it said. And there were all kinds of things that they talked about, and I got fascinated reading those. For example, if you take the number 9, 9 times 1 is 9, 9 times 2 is 18. So you take 2 and you drop 1 and you get 1, subtract 1, you get 1, and 1 and 8 are 9. 9 times 3 is 27. 1 less than the 3 is 2, and you got the 7, you got the 29. And you find a whole pattern.
Did you find this interesting, Joe?
for example, and I still use that adage when I give, one of the things I do now is English. I have no formal classes. I do teach 6 sessions, 6 days of juggling 3 times a semester to different classes. This is part of the freshman, what they call fine arts survey. And I do have a lot of fun times doing that. And but I do teach a unit sometimes in either algebra or in trig on why do we have the names sine, cosine, tangent, cotangent, secant, and cosecant.
Just to irritate.
That's not a question.
And I talk about the fact is that once I was interested in that question, and I started researching it and looking for it and came up with it and found out how it came to existence. And I said, and then when I finished the whole thing of how I discovered it and then how they can understand it and how clear it makes trigonometry. Why do they have crazy names for things? How clear it makes that. That really, what I was trying to teach you is the fact is that if you want to learn something, sometimes you got to do it on your own. And you've got to learn to do research. Last night I had the privilege of going to dinner with a senior who was getting ready to graduate. He's in his last quarter, which started on Tuesday. And I went with his parents. And when he was a freshman, his father, who was at that time a lieutenant in the police department, came to my son Dan, who was at that time a patrolman in the police department in the city of St. Louis. My son Dan is now a sergeant. And he said to my son Dan, Dan, you know that I have a son who's a freshman at SLUH High? And I said, my son Dan said, yes, I do. And he says, well, he's flunking, he's getting a D- if not flunking, Algebra 1. I've got to find him a tutor. And where can I go? And my son Dan said, my father, we have to keep him off the streets. My son Dan, I understand, is one of the among the police people in the city of St. Louis. Well, you read to my son. I have a son who works for the St. Louis Police Department. His name is Dan Schulte. If they laugh and smile, I know they really know him. You know, so anyway, I went and I started teaching this young man, and I took him at the end of one semester. I took him from that D- F student to being a B student, and that's what he got at the end of freshman year. And so at the end of 4 years now, he is such a good student, really a good student. He's getting A's in his 2 math classes that he's taking, and he said the only thing I'm having problems with is the English, because I have a problem with words, and I just don't have the right kind of words in my vocabulary yet. So I'm having problems writing. And he said, but they were thanking me for what I had done for their son. And I looked and I told them there was a young boy who this year came to me at the end of the first semester with the same question. I'm a D and an F student. And he just came back at the end of the 3rd quarter with a B. So it can be done. And I keep telling the students, you can get this. You have to work at it. That's the important thing. If you want it, work at it.
I think you also told me, and we don't understand this, how much preparation the teachers get. I mean, it takes a lot of preparation to be able to teach us.
And so one Monday morning in first part of October, end of September, somewhere in there, I walked into my mailbox at SLUH High, and there was a note from Father Sheehan said, Joe, please see me before the school day starts. So I immediately picked up a piece of paper and I walked into his office and said, is there anything, you wonder when you're being called in? But I went anyway, and he
really wondered.
what?
I said, when the teachers called in, then you really got it.
And so all of a sudden he said, here's the calculus book, Joe. Charlie Conway, who was teaching at that time, has gotten ill and has to cut back, and we've decided that you're the one who's going to take over the calculus class. I give you a week to catch up. And so I I said, fellas, just start doing new problems. And we'll catch up. By the way, tell her that she has to warm all this up later. But
Well, you know
I'm
what,
finished.
a couple more stories and then we'll have.
Let me finish this story.
Yeah.
So once she gets all the food out. So anyway, I was always a section ahead. If I was teaching 5-2, then that evening I was working on 5-3.
That was always a section behind.
And one of my favorite teaching stories was when I was that year. One of the things I did was I always did and I would still do it. In fact, if they do, a lot of teachers now do it. Before you begin a chapter, you give out all the problems that are assigned for every section. So if a student is sick or absent for some reason, he immediately knows that what homework he has. He doesn't have to call anybody. Now most teachers put it on the internet and they can check a web page and things like that. But I would hand those out. So I was always, and then I was doing the problems, and I would choose some easy problems and then middle ones and then 1 or 2 hard ones. Just as, had to challenge everybody. And so one day I walked in and I said, any questions? My usual process was after the quiz. If you remember, I always gave a quiz to begin the class. And I said, I said, any questions? And then somebody said, could you do problem like 26? And I said, anybody got the solution? And nobody had the solution at the moment. And I said, well, folks, I got to admit something. I didn't get it either. I said, you sure somebody out there doesn't have it? Please. Well, one of those timid geeks that sat in the corner, way back in the corner, raised his hand and said, Mr. Schulte, I have it. I said, his name was Steve. And I said, Steve, would you please put it on the board? He said, well, I have 3 different ways to attack the problem. And I said, I don't care, just put one of them. So, and he got it. And like what happened. So the second semester, same thing happened. Somebody asked for a problem like 23. Would you please? Anybody got a solution? Because I always like to get the students involved showing their particular solutions. And all of a sudden, I said to say, I'm sorry again, I don't have it again. And so I said, Steve, you got it? And Steve said, I didn't get it either, Mr. Schulte. I said, all right, we just got to keep working at it. Got to keep working at it. It's not, And so, middle of the summer, after graduation, I get a letter in the mail from Steve with the solution to the problem, which I immediately took and stapled to the page in the book.
That's a good place to let's take a break. This is good. We'll continue after we, do you want